Stop. Before you go any further, you need to understand one brutal truth about modern conflict. The most devastating attacks don't always come from missiles or tanks, but from something silent, unseen, and deeply psychological. You think you know the story of the current conflict, but I'm here to tell you there is a $1 million secret on the battlefield that was completely neutralized by a single, terrifyingly simple counter tactic. The media never covered this. Military analysts are scrambling to understand how one side lost a massive technological advantage, not to a superior weapon, but to pure, brutal efficiency. Imagine this: a system costing $1 million, a marvel of Western engineering, designed to give one side an undeniable asymmetric edge. It's their eyes in the sky, their shield against the unseen, their technological leap forward. Now, imagine all of that being rendered useless, shut down, and turned into expensive scrap. Not by a complex cyber attack, and certainly not by a bigger missile, but by a simple, almost primitive approach. For the longest time, the global narrative focused on the visible losses and gains. But the real war, the silent war, is fought over information, perception, and the neutralization of technology. This isn't just a story about a specific battle. It's a stark warning about the future of defense spending and the terrifying simplicity of effective warfare. In this deep dive, we are going to break down the one tactic that proved that sometimes the low-tech solution beats the high-tech investment every single time. And trust me, you won't believe how obvious the secret turned out to be. The core belief, the fundamental mistake, was placing too much faith in the system's technical specifications. They believed the encryption was unbreakable. They believed the frequency hopping was too fast to track. They believed the hardware's resilience was a match for any kinetic attack. This technological arrogance, the assumption that spending $1 million guarantees invincibility, is a common pitfall in modern military thinking. It's a classic case of what happens when you focus too much on the what and ignore the brutal simplicity of the how and why on the ground. The designers and users of the Phoenix system fell victim to the most ancient military lesson of all. Every defensive system has a weak point, and often that weak point is not in the hardware or the software, but in the environment, the human element, or the fundamental physics of communication. The side that shut it down understood this perfectly. They didn't try to outspend their opponents, they simply out-thought them. And that is the secret we are about to uncover in detail. The question is, are you ready for the brutal truth? The counter tactic, we'll call it Tactic X, is shockingly simple, almost insulting in its elegance. It was not a complex electronic warfare system, nor was it a multi-stage missile intercept. Instead, it was a masterful exploitation of human bias and the sheer physics of signal processing. The fundamental problem with the Phoenix system was its reliance on a clear, stable radio frequency band for real-time data transmission. Tactic X exploited this by not trying to jam the signal, a complex, expensive, and easily detectable act, but by completely drowning it out with deliberate, high-volume noise pollution. Think of the Phoenix system as trying to have a highly confidential conversation in the middle of a major rock concert. The Russian tactic wasn't to hack the phone, jamming, or kidnap the speaker, kinetic attack. It was simply to turn up the volume of the speakers on stage, making the highly encrypted, high-tech, $1 million conversation completely unintelligible. This noise pollution was generated by numerous, low-cost, readily available devices, operating just outside the protected frequency band of the Phoenix system. These weren't sophisticated jammers, they were commodity electronics, modified to emit a wide spectrum noise floor that bled directly into the Phoenix system's critical bandwidth. This created an overwhelming signal to noise ratio problem. The encrypted data was still being sent, but the background static was so immense that the receiving units could no longer reliably separate the signal from the noise. The Phoenix system's processors, highly advanced as they were, couldn't cope with a level of environmental pollution that its design parameters hadn't fully accounted for. The genius of Tactic X lies not just in the hardware, but in the psychological manipulation it achieved. The defenders, seeing their $1 million system failing, immediately assumed they were under attack by an equally advanced electronic warfare platform. This is confirmation bias. At its most brutal, high-tech failure must be met by high-tech counter-attack. They spent valuable time and resources trying to locate, identify, and counter advanced jamming systems that simply didn't exist. Meanwhile, the simple, cheap, disposable noise emitters continued their work, saturating the airwaves. The cost, too, benefit ratio here is staggering. For every $1 million system neutralized, the opposition spent perhaps a few $1,000s on noise generation equipment. This asymmetry drained the defenders' resources, forced operational pauses, and, most critically, sowed widespread disillusionment and fear. If their best technology could be beaten by what essentially amounts to modified garage sale electronics, what hope did they have? The ultimate goal was achieved. The Phoenix system was operationally shut down, not by destruction, but by paralyzing its functionality and sowing a sense of technological betrayal among its operators. The side that deployed Tactic X understood that in the modern war machine, if you can destroy the trust in the technology, you don't need to destroy the technology itself. This leads us to the terrifying implications for future conflicts, where information paralysis is the new gold standard of attack. The implications of Tactic X extended far beyond the neutralization of the Phoenix system itself. The failure initiated a cascade of strategic and psychological failures for the defending forces. This is the knock-on effect of information paralysis, and it is exponentially more damaging than the loss of a single piece of equipment. Firstly, the most immediate consequence was the return to manual exposed operations. The Phoenix system was designed to eliminate the need for operators to manually scan the horizon, reducing their exposure to direct fire. When it failed, units were forced to revert to old B-school methods, manning exposed observation posts using less secure analog communications and relying on older, slower decision-making processes. This massively increased response times and, tragically, increased casualties. The $1 million secret failed, and the consequences were paid for in human lives and lost ground. Secondly, the event triggered a crisis of confidence. The forces had been trained to rely on the technological superiority of the Phoenix system. Its sudden, baffling failure created an almost existential doubt about all their advanced Western-supplied technology. If the best system could be neutralized by an unknown, seemingly low tech method, then what else was vulnerable? This mental paralysis, the fear of a hidden, simple countermeasure, slowed decision, making across the board, giving the attacking forces a critical time advantage in their maneuvers. The third strategic fallout was the massive resource drain. Analysts and technical teams were immediately diverted from ongoing operations to a frantic, weeks-long effort to diagnose and counter the perceived high-tech electronic warfare attack. Millions of dollars were spent on new detection equipment, advanced filtering software, and specialized personnel flown in to combat a non-existent enemy. This diversion of critical intellectual and financial capital was a silent victory for the attacker, who spent virtually nothing to tie up the defender's most expensive assets. This whole sequence serves as a powerful illustration of a core military principle. Vulnerability is not a matter of budget, but a matter of insight. The aggressor looked beyond the glowing screens and complex diagrams to the fundamental, messy reality of the electromagnetic spectrum. They understood that information overload can be just as effective as information denial. Tactic X was a masterclass in asymmetric warfare, proving that the most effective strategy is often the one that exploits the enemy's deepest assumptions. The stunning success of Tactic X offers crucial, uncomfortable lessons for every nation that relies heavily on advanced defense technology. The age of unassailable, million-dollar technological superiority is over. Moving forward, the rulebook for defense strategy must be completely rewritten. Firstly, the principle of simple resilience. Future defense systems must be designed not just to withstand complex cyber attacks, but to operate effectively in a state of absolute, chaotic environmental noise. The focus must shift from complex encryption to basic signal filtering and frequency agility that can adapt to high levels of deliberate, low-cost interference. The question is no longer, Is it unbreakable? But can it still function when the battlefield is saturated with noise? Secondly, the psychology of assumptions. Military and defense planners must actively challenge the assumption that every attack requires an equally advanced defense. The default response to a technological failure cannot be to search for a more expensive counter system. Instead, analysis must begin by seeking the most simple, low-cost countermeasure possible. This requires a change in culture, from technological arrogance to humble, adaptive problem solving. The key is to never let your enemy exploit your own confirmation bias. Thirdly, the criticality of the electromagnetic spectrum. EMS. Environment. The EMS is the invisible ocean upon which all modern warfare sails. Tactic X demonstrated that control over this environment does not require active jamming, which is obvious and easily countered, but rather passive saturation. Future defense strategies must prioritize the continuous mapping, monitoring, and, most importantly, the control of the entire battlefield EMS, viewing noise pollution as a form of attack as potent as any projectile. While this is a military lesson, the core principle of Tactic X applies directly to your personal life, career, and finances. Your goals, your $1,000,000 secret, are often shut down, not by a massive, complex enemy, but by constant, low-level noise pollution. Think about this. Your focus, your Phoenix system, is your concentration. It's shut down not by a major life crisis, but by the low-level noise of constant social media notifications, the endless stream of fragmented news, and the fear of missing out, FOMO. Your health, your body's ability to heal, is shut down not by one massive disease, but by the constant noise of poor sleep, chronic, low-level stress, and ultra-processed food. The solution is the same. Eliminate the noise. You don't need a $1,000,000 defense system for your focus. You need a few low-tech, simple tactics, turn off the notifications, prioritize sleep, and return to simple, whole foods. The lesson from the battlefield is clear. If you can neutralize the noise, your core system, your mind, your focus, your health can operate at its maximum potential. The military response to Tactic X cannot simply be to design better filters. The true next level strategy must involve adapting the entire framework of information warfare to acknowledge the power of simple signal saturation. Firstly, the shift from encryption to adaptive frequency. Future defense systems cannot rely on a single secured frequency or even a small cluster. They must employ truly adaptive, ultra-wideband frequency hopping capabilities that can continuously scan the entire electromagnetic spectrum and dynamically select communication channels with the lowest noise floor. This isn't about protecting one lane of traffic, it's about having access to every conceivable lane, instantly. Secondly, integrity over confidentiality. The Phoenix system prioritized confidentiality, keeping the data secret, but neglected integrity, ensuring the data was usable. The new design philosophy must be to build systems that can verify data integrity even through heavy noise. This could involve redundancy measures, where the same data packet is sent across multiple disparate channels simultaneously. Even if Tactic X neutralizes 90% of the channels, the 10% that survive ensure the critical information gets through. This is the new definition of resilient. Thirdly, the role of disposable tech in counter-EW electronic warfare. If the enemy is using cheap, disposable noise emitters, the countermeasure should be equally cheap and disposable. The future of counter-electronic warfare is not another multi-million-dollar jet. It's likely thousands of tiny, low-cost drone decoys or automated land-based units designed to detect and pinpoint the source of Tactic X, then neutralize it with a simple kinetic measure. This involves using mass and disposability as a strategic advantage, beating low tech with low cost. Lastly, the psychological counter-attack. A core part of the next level strategy is psychological. The failure of the Phoenix system caused a confidence crisis. The counter response should be a transparent, rapid public display of the simple solution. Imagine a quick, clear demonstration of how the low-tech noise was bypassed with a simple software patch or a cheap hardware addition. This restores trust, reassures the frontline soldiers, and, most importantly, completely nullifies the psychological victory achieved by Tactic X. The power of simplicity can be used to attack as well as defend. The successful tactic, like Tactic X, which achieves a massive strategic victory with minimal destruction, raises profound ethical questions about the nature of modern conflict. When is information warfare considered an act of aggression? And when is it simply a clever application of physics? Firstly, the principle of non-lethal paralysis. Tactic X is fundamentally non-lethal in its immediate application. It doesn't destroy the Phoenix system, it only makes it unusable. This raises the possibility of a new form of conflict where the primary goal is not the physical destruction of the enemy's assets or personnel, but the systematic, total paralysis of their ability to command, communicate, and perceive. A future war could be won purely on the basis of superior information and communications integrity, without firing a single shot. This is a terrifying, yet potentially less destructive, path of conflict. Secondly, the attribution problem. Jamming is a focused, intentional act that can often be traced back to a specific point of origin. Tactic X, broad, spectrum, low, power noise pollution, is incredibly difficult to attribute. How do you distinguish between deliberate military noise and simple, massive, industrial-grade electromagnetic interference? This attribution problem means that deploying Tactic X can be done with a high degree of plausible deniability, making retaliation or diplomatic condemnation difficult, thereby lowering the threshold for engagement in information warfare. Thirdly, the weaponization of commercial technology. Tactic X uses commercial shelf electronics modified for military ends. This blurs the line between commercial and military-grade technology. In the future, every civilian electronic device capable of emitting an electromagnetic signal could potentially be viewed as a latent weapon. This necessitates a radical reassessment of who is involved in information warfare, extending the battlefield into the realm of civilian infrastructure and technology, creating vast new vulnerabilities. Lastly, the moral imperative of transparency. Given the devastating, non-kinetic nature of information attacks, there is a moral imperative for greater transparency and dialogue between nations on the rules of engagement in the electromagnetic spectrum. Without clear, agreed upon boundaries, the successful deployment of a tactic like Tactic X encourages a global race toward the most covert, asymmetric, and destabilizing forms of information warfare. The world is watching to see if a lesson can be learned from this silent war, or if a new, invisible conflict paradigm has just been unleashed. The effective neutralization of a major million-dollar defense system by a simple counter tactic sends deep geopolitical shockwaves across the globe, fundamentally altering the perceived balance of military power. Firstly, the reassessment of Western defense spending. For decades, the Western military alliance has based its perceived superiority on technological and financial might. The assumption was that the highest priced, most complex hardware was the most effective. Tactic X is a brutal repudiation of this belief. It forces a complete, existential reassessment of how defense budgets are allocated. Why spend millions on a system that can be neutralized by a few $1,000s worth of modified consumer electronics? This is a massive pain point for defense contractors and a cause for deep concern among allied governments. The focus will inevitably shift from massive, centralized systems to distributed, resilient, and adaptive low-cost technology. Secondly, the rise of asymmetric threats. Tactic X legitimizes and champions the power of asymmetric warfare. It tells smaller nations and non-state actors that they do not need to match the technological spending of a superpower to achieve a decisive military advantage. They simply need a deeper understanding of the system's fundamental, often overlooked, vulnerabilities. This democratizes the battlefield, making asymmetric, unconventional attacks a far more significant threat to established global powers. This is a geopolitical toss-up that creates widespread instability and forces every major power to rethink its defense doctrine from the ground up. Thirdly, the erosion of deterrence by technology. A core tenet of modern deterrence theory is the threat of an overwhelming technological response. Tactic X demonstrates that this technological deterrent can be rapidly and cheaply nullified, raising the specter of a world where massive arms spending buys you only an illusion of security. The new deterrence will be based on resilience, speed of adaptation, and the ability to fight effectively in a fog of information, a reality far more complex and unpredictable than the previous high-tech arms race. Lastly, the global scramble for EMS control. The most lasting geopolitical impact of Tactic X is the global scramble for superiority in the electromagnetic spectrum. Every nation now recognizes that the EMS is the new high ground of warfare. This will lead to increased covert R&D spending on both passive, like Tactic X, and active electronic warfare systems, creating a new, invisible arms race that is difficult to monitor and control. The silent war is now the main event, and every power is desperately seeking its own million-dollar secret countermeasure. The most devastating consequence of Tactic X was not hardware failure, but the psychological failure of the human operators. This highlights a critical, often overlooked area in military strategy: the psychological resilience required to operate effectively under technological betrayal. Firstly, the dependence syndrome. The soldiers operating the Phoenix system were trained to depend on its flawless performance. When the system failed, not with a bang, but with the silent, insidious creep of noise pollution, it induced a state of shock and helplessness. This is the dependence syndrome. When highly reliable technology fails, the human operator, stripped of their expected edge, suffers a psychological breakdown that is far more debilitating than a simple equipment malfunction. They didn't just lose a tool, they lost their faith in the technological shield. Secondly, the training gap. The training protocols for the Phoenix system were almost certainly focused on responding to clear, identifiable threats, missile attacks, conventional jamming, or kinetic damage. They were not trained to operate effectively when their high-tech sensory input became deliberately confusing and saturated with non-malicious-looking noise. The gap wasn't in the technical manual, it was in the imagination of the trainers. Future military training must incorporate exercises designed specifically to simulate chaotic, noisy, and confusing information environments, forcing operators to revert to basic, resilient human intelligence when technology falters. Thirdly, restoring confidence. The power of low-tech skills. The only antidote to the psychological trauma inflicted by Tactic X is the restoration of confidence in basic, non-digital skills. If a system can be defeated by simple noise, then the operator's training must empower them to function perfectly without it. This means prioritizing basic human observation, communication, security discipline, and manual command and control procedures. By mastering low-tech resilience, the psychological dependency on the high-tech system is broken, turning the operator into an adaptable human weapon rather than a mere technological accessory. Lastly, the enduring power of deception. Tactic X is a brutal lesson that, in warfare, perception is reality. The enemy successfully deceived the operators into believing they were facing a superior, advanced threat, thus maximizing the psychological and resource-draining effects. The true power of this tactic was not its technological effectiveness, but its capacity for deception. Future defense planning must incorporate red teaming strategies focused not on breaking the system, but on deceiving the human operators into believing the system has broken itself. To truly convey the gravity and brilliance of Tactic X, the narrative must be framed not just as a technical analysis, but as a compelling story of loss and potential redemption. This requires applying specific storytelling techniques to the raw military data. Firstly, the protagonist. The Phoenix system operator. The true protagonist is not a nation or a system, but a young, highly trained operator, let's call her Sergeant Lena, who was utterly confident in the Phoenix system. Her goal was mission success, and her motivation was her unshakable faith in her technology and training. The story should begin with her enjoying the immense confidence the system provided. Secondly, the rising action, the creeping noise. The conflict begins not with a bang, but with the creeping, insidious noise pollution. Lena notices intermittent glitches, confusing data spikes, and frustrating failures to link. She initially attributes this to equipment malfunction or human error, a subtle, psychological trap set by Tactic X. This slow erosion of trust is the most critical stage of the rising action, building tension and a sense of growing unease. Thirdly, the climax, the moment of paralysis. The climax occurs when Lena's unit is in a critical, high-risk operational moment, and the Phoenix system, their eyes and shield, fails completely, turning the $1 million screen into a useless display of static. The high-tech, high-stakes system is suddenly defeated by an utterly trivial, low-tech problem. This is the moment of maximum psychological and military peril for Lena. Her internal conflict, the betrayal of her technology versus the need to revert to manual, exposed operations, drives the climax. Fourthly, the falling action, the brutal discovery. The falling action begins with the frantic post-mortem, where the advanced jamming theory is debunked and the humbling truth of Tactic X is revealed. They were beaten by noise, not by technology. This revelation is painful but necessary, leading to the lesson, the profound realization that technological might is meaningless without resilience and adaptability. Lastly, the resolution, the path to redemption. The story concludes not with defeat, but with Lena's decision to embrace the new reality. She starts rigorous training in low-tech resilience and basic operational security. The resolution is the message of hope and empowerment. True strength comes not from the complexity of your tools, but from the simplicity and strength of your human judgment. The story's message to the audience: don't let the noise of life drown out your signal. The military lesson of Tactic X can be directly applied to your daily life. Your personal goals, your focus, and your health are under constant attack by a form of noise pollution that is cheap, pervasive, and incredibly effective at paralyzing your potential. We will call this the digital noise floor. Firstly, identify your Phoenix system, your high-value goal. What is the one goal that requires your absolute clear channel focus? Is it starting a new business, finally getting healthy, or reconnecting with your family? This is your high-value asset, your $1 million secret, the thing you must protect from interference. Secondly, detect the noise emitters, the low-cost distractions. Tactic X uses cheap, mass-produced emitters. In your life, the noise emitters are your smartphone notifications, the endless scroll of social media feeds, the fear of missing out, FOMO, that forces you to check every email instantly, and the non-critical time, wasting tasks you allow to bleed into your productive hours. These are not massive threats, they are low-cost, high-volume noise that paralyzes your concentration. Thirdly, implement the simple resilience countermeasure. You do not need an advanced, expensive defense. You need simple, low-tech resilience measures. Turn off all non-essential notifications permanently. This is your simplest and most effective signal filter. The 90-20 rule. Dedicate 90 minutes of your day to your high-value goal with zero noise. No phone, no email, no interruptions. Follow this with a 20-minute break. The digital decoy plan: if you must check social media or news, designate a specific 15-minute window for it, treating it like a scheduled, low-priority task, not a reflex. This prevents the noise from bleeding into your clear channel time. Lastly, restore integrity, trust in your system. Just as the Phoenix system operators lost faith, you may have lost faith in your ability to focus or stay disciplined. The only way to restore that integrity is through small, consistent wins. Implement one low-tech countermeasure today and stick to it. Every time you successfully neutralize a digital noise emitter, your confidence in your own focus system is reinforced. The war on distraction is won not with advanced tools, but with simple, brutal discipline. In the realm of health, the principle of Tactic X is even more sinister. Your body's natural ability to heal and maintain longevity, your internal Phoenix system, is constantly under attack by low-level, pervasive noise pollution that prevents it from functioning correctly. Firstly, the high-value asset, cellular communication. Your long-term health is dependent on clear, efficient communication between your cells. This allows your body to repair damage, fight disease, and manage inflammation. This is your essential information channel, the signal you must protect. Secondly, the noise emitters, chronic, low, level stress, and inflammation. The noise that shuts down this system is not a sudden, massive disease, but the chronic, low-level inflammation caused by ultra-processed food that creates constant, low-grade metabolic distress, forcing your cells to deal with a continuous noise floor of sugar and synthetic chemicals. Chronic stress, the constant psychological loop of worry and anxiety that elevates cortisol levels. This stress isn't a single attack. It's a non-stop background noise that drowns out your body's repair signals. Poor sleep, lack of quality sleep, is the daily deployment of Tactic X against your brain and body, preventing the critical system clean up that happens during deep rest. Thirdly, the simple resilience countermeasure. The solution to Tactic X in your body is to reduce the noise and simplify the signal. Prioritize whole, single ingredient foods, vegetables, fruits, and lean proteins. This is a clean signal that your cells can easily process for repair and energy. Implement short, deliberate deep breathing sessions, like a minute of box breathing, to act as a cortisol filter, instantly reducing the background noise of chronic stress. Just as a military system needs a clear shutdown sequence, so do you. Implement a strict sunset protocol, no screens an hour before bed, to allow your brain to exit the state of constant digital noise and enter the repair state of deep sleep. The lesson from the silent war on the battlefield is this: you cannot buy your way out of chronic illness with expensive supplements or complex diets. You must simply eliminate the noise that is paralyzing your body's brilliant $1,000,000 ability to heal itself. The financial world, much like the battlefield, is saturated with noise designed to cause paralysis, fear, and loss of confidence. Your investment portfolio, your Phoenix system, is an advanced tool designed for long-term growth, but it is often defeated by the constant, low-level noise of daily market fluctuations and media hysteria. Firstly, the high-value asset, long-term discipline. The single most critical factor for financial success is your ability to maintain discipline and stay the course over decades. This is the clear channel signal you must protect. Secondly, the noise emitters, short-term hype, and FOMO. The noise that paralyzes your discipline is not a major economic collapse, but the constant, high-volume noise of the 24-hour news cycle that sensationalizes minor market fluctuations to generate clicks. This is the financial equivalent of low-level noise pollution, forcing you to constantly react to non-critical information. FOMO investments, the endless stream of social media and influencer tips promoting the latest get-rich-quick schemes, or the fear of missing out on the next big stock. This noise creates a desperate need to act, destroying the long-term passive discipline required for real wealth creation. Hyper-optimization, the noise of constantly checking your portfolio, endlessly rebalancing, and obsessively trying to beat the market. This high-frequency, low-value activity paralyzes the simple effectiveness of compounding. Thirdly, the simple resilience countermeasure. The financial tactic X is to implement low-frequency, high-discipline countermeasures, set up a simple, diversified investment plan, and automate the contributions. This eliminates the need for daily, reactive decision-making, shutting down the need to listen to the financial noise. Implement a simple rule. Check your portfolio once a month or even once a quarter. This is your signal filter, preventing the daily noise from affecting your long-term, clear channel strategy. Focus your attention on the simple, fundamental metrics of value, earnings, management quality, and long-term trends. This is the true, high-integrity signal in the noise-saturated financial world. The $1,000,000 secret to long-term wealth is not a complex trading strategy. It's the simple, brutal discipline of eliminating the noise that compels you to panic, over-optimize, or chase the crowd. We began this journey by looking at a military secret, how a simple, low, tech noise tactic shut down a $1,000,000 defense system. We end with the profound understanding that this same silent war is being waged against your focus, your health, and your financial peace. The lesson of Tactic X is not about advanced weaponry. It is about the timeless human vulnerability to noise and distraction. Whether you are a soldier on the battlefield or an individual striving for a life of purpose, the principle remains the same. The most powerful system is the one that is most resilient to simple, pervasive noise. Firstly, your personal call to action: deploy the countermeasure today. Do not leave this information as mere theory. The high-tech, million-dollar Phoenix system of your life, your focus, your health, your discipline, is under attack right now. You have the simple, low-cost countermeasure in your hands. Identify your noise emitter. What is the single low-cost activity or device that creates the most noise pollution in your day? Is it your phone? A toxic relationship? The news cycle? Deploy the filter. Choose one simple resilience countermeasure from the past sections: turning off notifications, the 90-20 rule, the sunset protocol, or automating an investment. Act now. Implement that one countermeasure today. Do not wait for a perfect moment, because the noise will only get louder. The silent war for your attention, your health, and your future is ongoing. The choice is yours. Will you be the million-dollar system that is paralyzed by a cheap, simple trick? Or will you be the resilient force that implements the simple, low-tech discipline to win the war?